So has the fever for Donald Trump and the Republican Party broken? Unfortunately, given recent election results, I'd have to say the answer to that is no. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm here to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So now we're almost all the way through the primary season, and except for Wyoming, where I expect Liz Cheney is probably going to lose, we've seen that as many as 2/3 of the Republican nominees are people who are election deniers. The worst part is based upon an analysis by the Washington Post. In several key swing states, including my home state of Michigan here, the Republican nominees for positions where they'd be able to control the results of the election, potentially, are all election deniers. Many of whom have said that they'd actually undo the 2020 result if they had the chance today. Check out this report over here. You can see in Arizona, the governor, the secretary of state, and the attorney general, all three of those positions are key positions that will impact the election administration in that state, and all three Republican nominees are election deniers. One of the most prominent was Kari Lake, a former television personality who's become kind of a darling of the right-wing conservatives by staking her reputation as an election denier. In Michigan, the Republican race included somebody who was actually arrested for his involvement in January 6th. Now, he didn't win the primary, but it didn't really matter because all of the Republican candidates here in Michigan, for governor, for secretary of state, and for attorney general, are all election deniers. In Nevada, even though the gubernatorial candidate there isn't an election denier, candidate for secretary of state is. And you have to remember, the secretary of state is the one who actually administers the elections in states. And in Pennsylvania, we've got Doug Mastriano, who is nominated by the Republicans. He was literally an organizer of the January 6th rally, and he is their nominee for governor. And what's interesting about Pennsylvania is that the Secretary of State is actually someone who's just appointed by the governor. They're not separately elected by the state, as they are in most states. As a result, Mastriano has made it clear that he intends to appoint someone who would essentially hand the election over to the Republicans, even if they lose the election. And finally, among these swing states, we have Wisconsin, where Tim Michels, an election denier, who is endorsed by Trump, actually beat the choice of the establishment, who hadn't been endorsed by Mike Pence, if you can believe it. This Michels character is especially reminiscent of Donald Trump. He's a multimillionaire construction magnate who has a special bone to pick with Mr. Biden and the Democrats because he was actually scheduled to build the Keystone XL pipeline, which, of course, President Biden and the Democrats put the kibosh on. So he fits right in the mold with Donald Trump and his crew as somebody who's more concerned about his own interests over the interests of the public. So the key point is, if we look at these 6 states that are the key swing states in the presidential election, 5 of them have the people who will be controlling the election potentially being held by Republicans running this year who are election deniers. The exception, of course, is Georgia, which that was a particularly bitter loss for Donald Trump because, of course, we have Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who stood up directly to Donald Trump when Trump tried to get him to find a certain number of votes, enough to hand him the state. But the truth of the matter is, the 5 that we've listed here would have been enough to hand the election to Donald Trump, even excluding Georgia. And in each case, these Republican candidates have made it clear that that's exactly what they want to do. So if you aren't convinced yet that both Donald Trump and democracy are on the ballot in this next upcoming election, I hope you look at this data here to see just how close to the precipice we are if the Republicans win these elections. These are exactly the people who will be able to hand Donald Trump the election, even if he's soundly defeated by Joe Biden or whoever the Democrats nominate in the next presidential election. Well, given everything that's been happening with the investigation into Donald Trump, it's probably a good time to wonder if Attorney General Merrick Garland is the right person to be leading the investigation against him. After all, in the past, I've really been very critical of how cautious he is. Like, check out how I was in this video over here. But given the fact that he personally signed off on the search warrant of Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago, I think it's safe to say that he's so cautious he would make sure he wouldn't sign off on anything that he wasn't sure would stand up both in court and in public opinion. I'll see you then. In the meantime, Let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.